This day in Black baseball history. Today is going to be the October 28th, 2025 edition of This Day in African American Baseball History. And it's been just a great day for baseball all around. So, of course, last night, we had, well, actually, last night into this morning, they had the 18-inning game that they've been talking about all day. So if you actually want to see some games that maybe compare from the Negro Leagues, I did a live earlier today, so you can go back and look at that. It's the it's basically a response to what's going on right now, and it gave me a chance to talk about some of the great extra inning games. And so I have games that start from 14 innings all the way up to 20 innings, and some of those games, one pitcher pitched the entire game, 20 innings. Can you imagine that? That's like 2.5 games in one day. So yeah, that's kind of remarkable. But if you go back and listen to that, and I did that live this morning, and so it's been receiving a lot of accolades. So let's go and start with what we do here. And of course, if this is your first time ever joining me, you know that what I do is I give a this day in African American baseball history and tell you about a fact that happened this day. And then I give you some commentary that's based on my 45 plus years as a baseball historian. So there's a lot here for you if you're a baseball fan. If you just like to hear somebody talk, probably this is not the best place for you. But if you love baseball, man, this is a good place to be. So let's jump right in there, and we're going to start with something that happened in 1912. So October the 28th, 1912. Now, there's a guy named Cyclone Joe, Smokey Joe, he's called different things. He shut out a team of Major League All-Stars that included Larry Doyle of the New York Giants, Hal Chase of the Yankees at Olympic Field. And Williams tossed a 4-hitter and struck out 9. John Henry Lloyd and Grant Home Run Johnson hit safely twice. So, as you well know, Joe Williams is in the Hall of Fame in Cooperstown, and so is John Henry Lloyd. Now, to me, Grant Home Run Johnson should be there also, and I feel like that's a major oversight, and I'm trying to do whatever I can to make sure that that changes. So, excuse me. So just want to tell you about that. And Smokey Joe Williams, tremendous strikeout pitcher. He was probably the Negro League response to Rube Waddell. Rube Waddell, when he would play against African-American teams, he would always lead with a bunch of strikeouts. And they really had no one that could compare until Joe Williams came on the scene, and he did the same thing to those American and National Leaguers that Waddell was doing to the Negro baseball players who were on the professional team, especially in the East. So Joe Williams, all right? And I always talk about Joe Williams this time of year. You got to, because he's the guy that they're going to bring in. And you know, when I was growing up, of course, we talked about Reggie Jackson being Mr. October. Man, Oscar Charleston could have been Mr. October, but if you really get down to it, Mr. October had to be Cyclone Smokey Joe Williams. This guy pitched against everybody in the month of October, and this guy walked away with a lot of victories. So, if you don't know much about Cyclone Joe Williams, go look him up, and you'll find that he was an amazing fella out of San Gian, Texas. And I used to talk to Freddie Patek, and Freddie Patek played for the Kansas City Royals. He was traded to the Royals in the 70s from the Pittsburgh Pirates, and he's from the same hometown as Joe Williams. So we get a chance to talk about Joe Williams every time I see him, and he tells me what's going on in his whole hometown to recognize Williams. So little baseball trivia there you might not have been counting on. All right. Remember, I told you Joe Williams is Mr. October, right? So it's kind of quite naturally, I'm going to have another Joe Williams game. So the first one was October 28, 1912. This is October 28, 1913. Joe Williams, pitching for the Lincoln Giants, crushed Mike Donlin stars at New York's Olympic Field by a 9-1 score. Williams tossed a two-hitter and struck out 16. Leroy Grant and Louis Santop had 3 hits each in the game. And Donlin's, Donlin, one-time big league player, played with the New York Giants. Actually, he was in the 1905 World Series. He failed to hit safely against Williams at all. Donlin played against African-American teams quite often. He knew Rube Foster very well. Played against him in 1907 in a city series they had, and that was kind of a historic series. I wrote about it in one of my books. Actually, it was this book here. I just happen to have it. I wrote about that series in his book, and Mike Donlin was in that series. Mike Donlin could never make up his mind if he wanted to be a baseball player or actor, and he was married to an actress, and so he would always be waffling back and forth about what he was going to do. Later on, he does appear in some movies. So if you go back and look up his name, you'll find him playing in movies. So he had a long career. So he finally did go to acting, but around the turn of the century, he's a pretty good ball player. But he wasn't that good when he faced Joe Williams in 1913. All right, let's go to another one. Okay, that's probably enough for Joe Williams. He's Mr. October. He's been coming up every single night. So here we go. Let's go to October 28, 1928. The Kansas City Monarchs knocked off the Stanberry All-Stars 10-0 on a Sunday behind the pitching of lefty Andy Cooper. And Pete Stegman pitched for Stanberry. Stanberry is a small town here in Missouri. If you're headed toward Des Moines, Iowa, you'll go through Stanberry. It's up near Bethany, Missouri. That's where Babe Adams comes from. I've actually presented in Stanberry and Bethany, and as I go north. So I know Stanberry very well. But around Missouri, there were lots of semi-professional teams, and most of these towns had guys who would go up to the American National League. Maybe they play in the minor leagues, and they could get a game against maybe the Monarchs coming out of Kansas City. Sometimes at the end of the season, if a Negro League team finished up playing the Monarchs, they might pick up one of those games on the way back home. So this particular game, pretty late in the year. So I take it that the weather must have been pretty good that year for them to schedule that game over in Stanberry. Yeah, so you won't hear about Stanberry too often, but nevertheless, you're looking at somebody who presented there. Here you go. And was able to tell them this history. Yeah, so that's up around Bethany, Missouri. Bethany, Missouri. So let's keep it going. Now, by the way, Andy Cooper is in Cooperstown. If you go online and you look at his statistics, I guarantee you this game in Stanberry will never show. So you're going to learn something that you can't find online. All right, let's go to the next one. Hall of Famer. And lefty Andy Cooper out of Waco, Texas. Actually, I will tell you this. I was in Wichita a few years ago, and I ran into some of his relatives down in Wichita. I think it was a cousin, and he had a younger cousin who was probably, at that time, 50 years old, and they were around Wichita. So Wichita was connected to a lot of people. T.J. Young was connected to Wichita. Hallie Harden was connected to Wichita. And so a lot of good baseball players from there, and some pretty good actors too. What's her name that played in Gone with the Wind? Hattie McDaniels. Yeah, she's from Wichita as well. So Wichita, Kansas. And Saul Butler, who was in the 1918 Olympics, played professional basketball with the Gilkerson Union Giants. He is also buried there in Wichita. I've gone there and left flowers at his grave before. All right, so let's go on to the next one. We're going to go to October 28, 1934. Okay, so baseball/football player Joe Lillard, his long toss to a guy named Dick Mulhaupt. I'm not sure you pronounce it, Mulhaupt. Somebody knows how to pronounce that. on the 20-yard line, which went for the winning touchdown, gave the Westwood Cubs a 14-7 victory over the let's see, what's that? Morgana Wolves in California Professional Football League action before a crowd of 9,000. And most people don't know there's a history of African American football teams, professional football teams, and that has not been talked about nearly as much as the baseball, but that is a history, and I try to squeeze it in whenever I can. Joe Lillard, originally born in Texas, but was raised in Mason City, Iowa. He was a multi-sport athlete, played football, played baseball with the Gilchristen Union Giants, and also played basketball too. So he was a multi-sport athlete. And when I think of multi-sport athletes, most of these Negro Leaguers don't come to mind, but there were many. And so Joe Lillard is one I talk about often, because when you get down this time of year, you got football and baseball players who play football. So it gives you a chance to talk about Joe Lillard. I'll talk about him more, his baseball career, when we get back in the summer months next year, okay? So, but right now, I like talking about his football career. He played with the Chicago Cardinals in the NFL too. So that was Joe Lillard. So look him up. You don't have to take my word for this. Joe Lillard. These are names that should be household names, should have been household names when I was coming along, and they simply weren't. And one of the things I do when I write books is I try to write books that I wish would have been written for me when I first started, and when I was a kid. But pretty much the books that I was reading pretty much had me brainwashed until I woke myself up. And then I woke up a lot of other people because of that. Now we're talking about the Negro Leagues like we never talked about it before. And before I was born, it pretty much died off. And I did my part to resurrect it, and I'm still doing my part. Okay, let's go to the next one. How about this? October 28th, we're gonna jump all the way from 1934 to 1965. Tommy Agee, probably heard of this guy. I saw him play with the White Sox and also with the New York Mets. He collected a trio of hits in the Magallanes win over Lara in Venezuela Winter League play at Caracas, Venezuela. Now, I may be killing those pronunciations on those cities there, but somebody can help me out, right? I think I need to go and study up on how to pronounce some of these names so I say them well. I don't want people to get confused, especially if they try to look it up, right? So anyway, yeah, Tommy Agee, a great player, great outfielder. And so, but many guys went down in the 60s and they played winter league ball, either in Puerto Rico, some of them played in Cuba, and some of them played in Venezuela. And so that is a whole history that we need to keep telling and keep writing. So many of those things that just don't get talked about. But this is all baseball history. And of course, Mexico was another place they went. And so these ball players were able to hone their craft outside of the United States when prejudice and racism kept them from performing at the highest level in some of the places that they needed to be to achieve their goal to be a professional baseball player. These other countries would give us opportunity that you couldn't even get here. And that's a doggone shame. So anyway, that's a little history. You can look it up. You don't have to take my word for it, but just look it up. All right. So as I close tonight, I usually do a coming and a going. That's a ball player. Coming is someone who's being born on this date. The going is somebody who passed away on this date. So let's do the going first. October 28th, 1943, Otto Briggs died in Philadelphia, Pennsylvania. And of course, if you followed the recent World Series from African Americans, so you had the 100th anniversary of the Kansas City Monarchs in Hilldale in 2024. And then of course, they battled again in 2025, which was 100 years ago. So you had 101 years ago for 24 and 100 years ago in 2025. And Otto Briggs were on both of those teams. He was an outfielder. They had a pretty good outfielder too. Clint Thomas was another guy that was playing in the outfield. I did get a chance to interview Clint Thomas. I may be the only person alive who actually interviewed, I think, 5 people from the 1924 and 25 World Series. I interviewed Clint Thomas. Then I interviewed George Sweat. I interviewed Judy Johnson. I interviewed Newt Allen. I interviewed Chet Brewer, who appeared in the 25 World Series. So I had 4 from the 24 and 1 more additional from the 25 World Series. Guys, no one can make that boast who's alive today. And so you can imagine all the memories I have. And some of those people, like Chet Brewer, I spent the night at his house. I interviewed Clint Thomas at his house in Charleston, I think West Virginia, I think it was. I interviewed him in his home. Judy Johnson, we talked over the telephone a lot. I have those World Series pictures. I have several of them autographed by him. I'm thinking about making maybe one available for someone who's a serious collector out there, and maybe someone will want to have that in their collection. And of course, Newt Allen lived right here in Kansas City. And so, yeah, Newt lived on Park Avenue here in Kansas City. Yeah. So I even knew people who lived in the apartment with Newt Allen because he lived in an apartment complex, and I knew people who grew up in that same apartment complex. So, all right then. So that is Otto Briggs. He ended up being a writer for the Philadelphia Tribune newspaper. That's the African-American newspaper in Philadelphia. And guys, there's a whole history of African-American newspapers. I don't know how much you know about that. Most people who've done a little research might know about the Pittsburgh Courier or the Chicago Defender. Me, myself, the first articles I ever wrote for a newspaper were for the Kansas City Call. So the Kansas City Call gave me my break. 1985, I covered the 1985 St. Louis Cardinals versus Kansas City Royals World Series for the for the Kansas City Call. So I got my start through African-American newspapers. And so I'm still writing, still at it. So there's a great history there, and I use information from those sources as well as any source that has a baseball game in it that I can do the research on. So just want to let you guys know that I try to be the real deal. I'm not a person who is reading other people's things and then acting like that makes me a good historian. No, there's people who do that, but that's not what I do. I'm a primary source guy. And so if I do see something written, I got to go back and check it because I see so much information that's wrong. Or if I see something that someone's written, I ask, where did you get that from? Where'd that quote come from? Because people, believe it or not, will make up stuff. They will make up stories. People will say they did things that they never did. And people, in some of their books, they write information about Negro Leaguers that's just simply not true. There's a book out there, and it talks about Ruth Foster pitching against the Chicago Cubs. And Ruth Foster had gotten injured, had a hairline fracture. And so this person wrote in the book that Ruth Foster was faking an injury. It's in a book. It's in a book. This person didn't know what they were talking about, but they sold the book. And guess what? Simon & Schuster was the publisher. Simon & Schuster's never signed me, but of course I'm probably telling too much truth. They want crazy stories, and that person delivered it, and so Simon & Schuster published it. So anyway, I can go on and on and on. We're not going to do that tonight. Now we have the last thing is a coming. This is a guy who's coming. His name is Hurley Allen McNair, and of course he was born in Marshall, Texas, 1888. Hurley McNair was one of the greatest sun fielders in baseball history. Now, the sun fielder is a guy who could play in the field where the sun is shining brightly, never used sunglasses, never used charcoal under his eyes. He just knew how to put his hat, and he could just run stuff down. Hurley McNair also started out as a great pitcher. In 1911, he battled the Kansas City Blues, who were the American Association team. Back then, when they thought no black team could beat one of these teams, he battled the Kansas City Blues at the old Association Park to a 0-0 tie. That was Hurley McNair. It's a pitcher. This guy was a great hitter on top of it. He holds many of the Kansas City Monarch records in the early 1920s. Now, McNair, I didn't know him. Of course, I knew where he lived, and he died there in 1948. And that building is still standing where he lived. And if I get a chance, it was raining today. I started to take a picture of it and share it with you guys. But if I get a chance to get over there, I'll take a picture of that apartment complex and just share it with you so you guys will know where some of these historic places are. So that's Hurley McNair. He's buried in, let's see, what cemetery is that? I think it's Lincoln Cemetery. He's buried in the same cemetery with Charlie Parker. Charlie Parker, the great saxophone player, alto sax player, is buried in that same cemetery, along with Quincy Gilmore, who was a traveling secretary of the Kansas City Monarchs, and probably a whole lot of other people. New Joseph is buried in that cemetery. So there's a lot of history just all around us that we just miss over and over and over again. So that's Hurley McNair. And once again, I didn't actually know McNair, but McNair and his wife were married for over 50 years, never had any children, but they adopted a child and raised that child. And years ago, this is like 1980, I knew somebody, I can't remember who it was, but they were good friends with that child. And he came back to Kansas City. I remember he had a mobile home. He lived in Dayton, Ohio. Actually, I went to Dayton way back then too. But he came from Dayton, Ohio in his mobile home. And we sat and we talked. He said, when I get back, I'm going to send you some things from Hurley McNair. So if you go online and you see a picture of Hurley McNair batting, that came from him. And it first appeared in my book, The Negro Baseball Leagues of Photographic History. Since that, people beat the hell out of that print. And so they don't even credit it to me anymore. But if you ever look at that print, you'll see a little looping thing like in the corner. Well, if you ever see that looping little thing in the corner, just know I put that there. That was not on the original print. So every time someone would lift that print out of my book and claim it for themselves, and that little loop was there, I knew they stole it. Isn't that something? You'd be surprised how you can mark a picture and trace it to some pretty scandalous baseball researchers. How about that? So I just have a lot of fun out here telling these stories. And for 45 years, I've got a chance to be a part of Negro League baseball history. And so tonight, you get a chance to be a part of it as well. So I want to thank you all for joining. And I see somebody, CJ Edits. And I see someone named Cameron Mura. I think you joined me before. There's somebody named a Spider Fan out there. And somebody talks about, I guess their thing is football video shorts. So I'm looking, just kind of looking here. And then there's a Brianna. I'm not sure how you pronounce that last name. Ordon O'Donovan. Okay, so I just want to say hello, guys. If you were here for a moment, that's great. I appreciate you chiming in. Sometimes you can't spend 20 minutes with me, but if you spend just a few minutes with me, and here's the other thing, guys. I'm trying to get to 300 subscribers. So if you like this type of information, feel free to hit that subscription button and subscribe, and then come back from time to time. I'll be talking good stuff. Now, guys, I'm probably not going to tell you any jokes. So if you want to see some funny stuff, this is probably not the place to be. I don't have any half-dressed women on my site, guys, but I do have a lot of really full, let's see, I'll just say full of energy baseball information. So anyway, guys, that does it for me tonight. Yeah, I got my hat turned around backwards, so you know, I think I'm gonna turn around and I'm gonna close out here and call it a night, guys. I'll see you tomorrow with another edition of This Day in Black Baseball History, guys. We're just dancing along, trying to get to that 300 subscribers by Halloween. Help me out. We're getting a few every night. But there's got to be more baseball fans out there who just haven't found out about this broadcast yet. But we'll keep it going. All right, thank you, guys. Have a nice evening and keep enjoying the World Series. I think it's going to be a lot of fun.